Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something that I see coming up in my comments of my training vlogs, and it's when I do two relatively similar exercises. People will say, well, that seems pointless. There's no point in that. And two examples, like if I do a closed grip bench, and I'll show footage of these four lifts I'm going to discuss in the background. So if I do a closed grip bench and then I do a closed grip incline bench, people will say like, well, that's such a close movement. That just seems redundant. There's no point in doing that. Or let's say I do a Romanian deadlift in a good morning in the same training session. Again, people will say the movement pattern is so similar that I don't see the point. And let's come back over to the point. Are we trying to ingrain and practice a movement? Or are we trying to hypertrophy a muscle or a set of muscles? This doesn't make sense if your goal is to work a specific movement that you need practice at for the purposes of getting better at it competitively. Now, that doesn't mean that most lifts need that. Some lifts aren't that technical. Let's be honest here. Conventional deadlift is about the least technical classical lift you could possibly do. Practicing the movement doesn't do much for you. And when we're doing a bunch of rep work, right? We're doing a bunch of rep work. Everything that I'm doing in this video for these reps, for example, is going to be 80% or less of my 1 rep max. Practicing reps on anything other than extremely technical exercises like a clean and jerk does not have movement pattern carryover. You're not doing anything to practice your technique. This is purely for hypertrophy. If we're dealing with these sort of intensities, and I think everything done in this is something like 6 to 10 rep sets, right? We're talking about 70% up to high 70s, maybe 80% max on these lifts. And on these really, they're less than 80%. Okay, we don't get technique practice with weights that light. Not on these sort of lifts. Not on lifts that only have a single movement pattern. Right? A clean and jerk has multiple movement patterns. Right? There's 3 different major movements involved, done in sequence. Okay. Any sort of chest press is just one movement. These other 2 are hip hinges. These are one movement. These are not technical. You don't get any benefit. So let's come over. What are we doing? We're hypertrophying. What is it that I oftentimes say? What is the best way to bring up a lagging muscle? What's the best exercise? To do 2 really good exercises for it. In this case, these are multi-joint movements working multiple muscles. And they're good movements. So people would say, well, what's the point of doing a closed grip bench and a closed grip incline? Well, what are they both really good at? Upper chest, front delts, triceps, right? Closed grip bench, it does use more upper chest than lower chest. It's one reason people don't think of it as a chest exercise. It still works the lower chest. So does an incline, by the way. They work your lower chest. It's not as much as a wide grip bench does, or flat dumbbells, or decline dumbbells, or any of that. They don't work it as much. They don't work as much as dips. But they work the lower chest. But they work more upper chest. They both work a lot of front delt. Also, that closer grip makes them good at working triceps. Right? So that's why it might sound redundant. So people say, well, really, I mean, the incline, the upper. Well, no, because closed grip itself works upper chest more. When you bring the grip in, the emphasis moves towards the upper chest. Not the inner, that's a myth. The upper. But they're different angles. So if we start talking about maximizing hypertrophy, when we are working slightly different angles, and the research shows this, like let's say you're going to do 6 sets. In this case, I did do 6 total sets because 3 of each of these exercises. If you did 3 sets of really hard quality sets of one exercise and then 3 sets of a very similar exercise, at least for the same muscles, but just a different exercise for the same muscles. It doesn't have to be super similar. In this case, these are. Versus 6 sets of the same intensity of the same exercise, The data, the little bit of data that's looked at it has found the hypertrophy is a little higher for using the two exercises. It is slightly higher. And it makes sense why. Because you are fatiguing slightly different parts of the muscle at different movements. And this is actually one of the big reasons that dumbbells are so effective for chest. But bench works great, flat bench works great too. Because the dumbbell actually can turn into two slightly different exercises as you fatigue. The form changes because as you fatigue with certain parts of the muscles involved, or maybe your ratio of pecs to triceps, your angles on the movement will change a little bit to fatigue the other muscles when it gets harder to use the primary movers. And of course, it's got a longer range of motion than the barbell does, right? That's why dumbbells are prized for that. So by using two different chest presses, even with the barbell, we're still getting a similar effect there. Different muscles are going to be fatigued at a different ratio. Therefore, and by muscles, I'm even talking about certain heads and fibers in the individual muscle. We're going to more thoroughly work the three big muscles that we're thinking of here. Mostly chest, of course, in this case, upper chest bias, front delts, triceps. Works them at slightly different angles. Even when our shoulder angle changes, the amount of ratios that we put on the different heads of the tricep change a little bit. In other words, it's going to give us more complete development. Same thing, RDL versus good morning. Everyone's like, well, it's still a hip hinge. It's still working low back, glutes, hamstrings. Well, yeah, and it works quads. Don't forget about the rectus femoris being used. Let's not forget the lats as stabilizers, adductors, things like that, but the ratios are different. The hamstring involvement is slightly different between these two. The upper back involvement is different. The adductor involvement is different, right? Romanian deadlifts work the adductors harder. In fact, Romanian deadlifts are one of the best adductor exercises out there. They're right up there with deep squats, deep box squats. They're up there. The good morning works way more upper back. Of course, they both work the spinal erectors and the glutes and all that. But your ratios are different, and on a couple of muscles, they're dramatically different. And our angles are slightly different. It will give us more complete development. And in this case, those are really big exercises that involve a lot of different muscles. I mean, we are involving the traps, the lats, not just the glutes and hamstrings here, guys. Okay. Lats get more involved on the RDL. Middle and upper trap, middle and lower traps probably more involved on the good morning. So on and so forth. We're getting more overall development from two movements in this case and in all these cases that are relatively similar. We're better off doing 3 sets of each than doing 6 sets of just one if our goal is to maximize hypertrophy. And that's what we're doing with our rep work. We do rep work for hypertrophy, not to practice a movement pattern. We're not doing it to maximize force production. We are doing supplemental work like this to get bigger. And if we're going to do it to get bigger, we should probably use it to get as big as possible, as efficiently as possible. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.